Hey guys, we're back for part two of the War on Drugs debate between Randall and Gage. This is the Justice for All podcast, and where we left off last time, Gage was reminding me that people eat people's faces with bath salts, and that's why they shouldn't be legal. So let me tackle that point. There's more to it, but I'm just being petty. I'm sorry, guys. All right. So your argument was, why we're going to legalize these things when they are inherently more addictive than maybe other things, and some people can't control those things, right? I can see that to a point, but then again, if we're talking about, I think it's hard. I think really these things are an individual thing, and I'm going to say this. All right, so I mean, heroin is addicted, yeah, and it can ruin your life, but man, so is tobacco. I'm sorry, but if we're talking about things that ruin people's lives and split up families, that does it. I mean, it really does. Or drinking. How many times have you seen like domestic violence cases where Papa? I'm going to use the classic one. Papa comes home after a long day of work. He's tanked, and then Mrs. don't like it, and next thing you know, Horton ignores domestic violence. I Family Guy reference. But you know what I mean, though? I think really to say that one substance is more addictive than another and inherently more dangerous, I don't think is the case. I think if we're going to say that.
My point is with that is the addictive nature of it and the mind-altering part
Okay.
combined.
Yeah, sure. And my whole thing is, if we're going to do that, we got to look at everything else. I mean, who knows? Me and you, say we got heroin today, we could probably not do it tomorrow. We don't know. I've never done heroin. I can't say that. And I'm sure it's different from other people, meth too, things like that. But I do know this. I know I can drink and turn it off. I know I can smoke cigarettes and turn it off. I know I can smoke weed turn it off if I needed to, and I wouldn't have a problem. And also with the other things like the shrooms, the LSD, things like that, those things aren't addictive, for me, personally. And although I do have a pretty good knowledge of drugs and kind of what they do to you, things. So I've educated myself, and I think, and again, this is just me personally. I have done my research, and between being knowledgeable and having experience when I'm going into that, I think that's really helped me not get addicted to these things, and I think a lot of other people would agree. I just know some people that have done other things too, and they're just fine as well, and I think some people can't turn it on and off. So again, I just think if we're gonna say this is this and that and this can ruin this, they just ruin things in different ways, or they cause problems in different ways. And again, if we're gonna have let me ask you this: where would be a good stopping point for you as far as I say I think everything should be legal, regulated. Like I said before, and as you say, you think so. Weed is weed good enough for you, or what do you think would be a fair if you had to say?
And then there's a whole other debate entirely off of, yes, I believe, most drugs should be illegal, but do I also believe in the punishments that are dealt out?
Yeah, because that's a good point.
I think, I think a lot of these drugs should be illegal, but I think there should also be rehabilitation processes in place as well.
Yeah.
Because a lot of countries, some countries in Europe and stuff are starting to turn to that more, and I think the U.S. has a large problem with throwing these offenders in jail because they're doing drugs or whatever, and I mean it's just a waste of money, honestly.
Right.
Because if you can rehabilitate these people and get them back out into society and actually be productive, that's a lot better because they can contribute to the economy rather than sitting there in jail and using our taxpayer money, or if they get out and aren't rehabilitated, they sit there on welfare or whatever else. So, I mean, I think these things should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to get them, at a shop or something like that. But at the same time, I also don't think the war on drugs has really been successful for our society and locking all these people up and just throwing away the key.
So where I didn't mean to. Those are some good points. I'll tackle them in a minute. But so where do you think it should stop though? Like as far as legality, like where should the government say there's no more, no more? This is where we're drawing the line.
Marijuana, I believe, should be legal.
Okay. What about other psychedelics like LSD, shrooms? Do you think that should be,
I could see some psychedelics being legal for certain purposes, like I know
therapy, maybe
different religions and stuff like that use them, like Native American religions. And stuff.
Oh yeah, they use peyote all the time.
Spiritual trips and stuff like peyote.
Yeah,
I could see that, but I don't think there's any reason for crack or meth or bath salts or heroin or cocaine to be legal.
Sure. So, okay, going back to what you said, I agree with the rehabilitation. That is another topic, but I do want to tackle it because it actually ties into a point I didn't even think about. That's a good point too. How many? I would look in the papers in Indiana, dude, all the time, and I would say 4 out of the 5 arrests were needle or lookalike substance or marijuana. And I agree. I think we should have those things. Now, here's another thing. If we had legal drugs and we did the rehabilitation, I think that it's a 2-step thing. We do the rehabilitation, we teach them about drugs, all this, that. The black market starts to dwindle. It's not going to go away. Let's be real. The black market still exists, people. I'm telling you right now, black market exists. I can buy weed cheaper than the dispensary still. The dispensaries are cheap too. It's a frenzy. But I'm gonna say like it's always gonna be there, but it's just not as prevalent, and the government still gets some tax dollars from it. Now going back to the jail point, these people, they go back to welfare and stuff, and what do they do usually as well? More times than not, they go back to their gangs. They start dealing the heroin, the cocaine, all that, the meth. They do that, and then they rob or whatever about it. You can cut the crimes there too drastically. You're the guy that has eighth of coke isn't going to go to jail anymore. The guy that has a needle and maybe like a gram of heroin, same thing. Instead, let's focus on where you can focus on is getting the guys that are distributing the heroin and stuff like that still. So I think with the teaching of the drugs, and I think with the rehabilitation in the prisons and the awareness, and then you can focus on not just the guy that has the heroin, the gram, or the guy that has the 8 of coke. You don't have to focus on those guys, but now you can focus your whole force on cracking down on the big distributors and even discourage further the black market. So I think if you do these things, you really can learn responsibly. We can come together, and we don't have to punish those kind of guys either. That why would a guy with a needle and maybe be struggling? Why would we want him to suffer that much? He's not raping a child, or he's not stealing or killing. He's a guy with a substance problem, and then we can look, if we're going to talk about substance abuse and people being in prison, well, there's guys I know that smoke packs a day too, and that's substance abuse. Or there's guys that are drinking a bottle. Why aren't they in jail? So it's kind of like, again, where's the line? And that's why I'm saying I think we should just get rid of the line and teach responsibility and those kind of things, and just naturally, the economy will rise. More people will probably be clean and off the streets, and then we can also discourage that black market we were also talking about as well. So, so that's kind of another point I wanted to bring up, and I think that's a good argument too. And I also, like I said, I agreed to a part. I think we handle the prisoners wrong. I don't think we should have private prisons. Terrible decision that we need to fix in this country. But I want to say that for another debate. But it does tie in a little bit to what we're talking about here. So those are a couple of my points on that.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you on the whole. We should be focusing more on the dealers themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
I think too much of the police force is focused on actually getting Joe Schmo down the street with a gram or whatever, not some other dude with pounds upon pounds of
or they're focused on the
they have.
the 18-year-olds at the park.
Yeah, exactly. They're going after some 16-year-old smoking pot instead of some dude in Chicago that's running a whole drug ring.
Mm-hmm.
But to that point though, I mean, I still think that heroin and stuff should be illegal, but I don't think you should be throwing these people in jail and stuff. I think you can make it illegal and send them through the rehabilitation, kind of like pretrial diversion, I guess.
Yeah.
Send them through the rehabilitation program, and then, like put more of your funding into that. I mean, another problem that we have in this country is that, we waste our money on stupid things that, we don't need to be. So that's why we don't have the money for things like this.
Right.
In an ideal situation, we should put forth, more money towards mental health and, institutions that actually help people.
Sure.
Instead of, leaving them abandoned and everything else. And I mean, that ties into our episode last week where, we talked about gun control, and we were talking about the same thing where, they need more funding for mental health, I think.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're getting into a point in today's society where you got, everybody's addicted to something. Everybody, there's so many, like, violent people out there that are, willing to do things that were never even thought of 30, 40 years ago. You got a heroin problem running rampant, which I blame on doctors and pharmaceutical companies because they're giving these opioid painkillers out. They're handing them out like candy, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And, as an example of that, a few months ago, my now ex-girlfriend came down to visit, and she ended up getting cellulitis whenever she was down here, we had to take her to the emergency room because she was about to board a plane that day, and they wanted to make sure she didn't have a blood clot because her leg was like swollen like half or like twice the size of the other leg, and all she had was cellulitis, which is like a skin infection, and they just have to give you an antibiotic. And they asked her like to rate her level of pain or whatever, and she said like a 2, which is low. And they gave her a prescription for Percocet.
What?
With a pain level of a 2. Yeah, they gave her the antibiotic, and then they gave her the prescription for Percocet. And she obviously didn't fill it, but it's like they hand those things out like candy. And I mean, all they do in those doctors' offices and hospitals and stuff to get this medication, all you have to do is like fill out like a survey, basically. Right. You could easily lie and say that your pain is a 10 and get the highest dosage of Percocet or Vicodin or oxycodone or whatever, and they'll just hand it out. Like there's no checks and balances there. And then people end up getting addicted to this stuff, and then down the line they cut them off because doctors can only give out so many prescriptions for these opioid painkillers, and then people are still addicted to them, and then they turn to heroin and fentanyl and stuff like that, and then sometimes they end up dying because they end up overdosing or whatever.
So those are some good points, and I do think we do have problems. Like it might be too relaxed, but really, I blame the system, like the laws we have, and then also the pharmaceuticals. Like I think both should share responsibility in correcting those kind of things. And when it comes to like legalizing those kind of things and the drugs in general, I think, like I said, if we really stress, we can't be greedy with this. We have to inform our people. But let me throw some stats and things like that at you real quick, Gage, and let me see what you think about this. So I looked at the Netherlands. Like as we know, the Netherlands, they have a really relaxed drug policy. Pretty much anything goes there, and it's one of the few countries that have allowed that. So I'm looking at this chart, and I see, I see the countries: United States, Netherlands, Norway, Japan, and Finland. And I have this chart from 1993 to 2009, the smokers as a percentage of the adult population. and the Netherlands in '93, the Netherlands was tied pretty much with Norway and Japan with the highest amount, and they did the drug thing around soon after that. And as I'm looking at this chart in '95, it goes down. '97, it's about the same. '99, it goes down. 2001, the same. In 2000, I mean, they all go down, but they still had, it was moderate. Like it still went down, and their drug policy is lax. And as those other countries that I mentioned, the Norway, United States, Japan, they have harsher regulation on drugs, and really the numbers stay consistent. Now I'm going to go up to this, and it says with the since the recreational use of drugs has been a policy in the Netherlands, the four major objectives of the government is to really prevent recreational drug use and treat and rehabilitate recreational drug users, to reduce harm to users, to diminish public nuisance by drug users, and to promote the economy. Those are the four main things there that the Netherlands have worked out, and we can see like their numbers don't really show. People aren't going to jail, people aren't ODing as much in this area, and a lot of people are thinking, now like the Japan stuff. They're kind of like us, the Japans of the world, the Finlands of the world, and though most people are we're still strict on like the cannabis and stuff, but for the most part we're consistent. But the Netherlands, you look at these kind of things, and it's hard to say like having the legal drugs is going to not cut down problems, because it looks here like they don't have as much crime. It sounds like their people are informed, and then those are also the same objectives I mentioned with the government is the same as the public. So if you really relax these things, and I think if we really let it loose, I think there's good things that could come out of it. And I'm not saying they don't have problems, because I looked at that chart. They still have pretty relatively high people still doing those things. But here's the thing. It's regulated. The government has a say, and people aren't suffering other consequences like the jails and the potential maybe ODing because they have other resources available, so that it doesn't come to that. And then the violence too also naturally goes down, but you don't really see a reduce in a lot of people are still going to get high. You're right. That's still a drawback. And again, I just can't stress enough. Like if it's okay, I mean, I'm not saying okay. If we're going to accept that, we have an epidemic, how are we going to solve it? Again, I don't think. I mean, I know this is kind of loosely related, but when we were talking about the shooting, the answer isn't take away guns. Here we have a problem with overdosing. The problem isn't taking away heroin. That's not going to go away. People are still going to find out how to get heroin. People are still going to find out a way to get weed. Or that's what I'm saying. Like people are still going to find a way. So why not have sanctions, regulations, and then make money from it, because it's going to happen anyway. And I think if we, like I said, it just comes to responsibility and policy on that, I think, and then the maturity of the citizens. And I think in the beginning you will have problems. You probably will. It's going to be a hard adjustment, but then later on, I think as time moves on, you naturally get those things.
Well, another way you could cut back on the usage is to cut off the supply.
Yeah, whereas, exactly.
Back in the 80s, for instance, I know Ronald Reagan was a huge, offender of, as much as I like the guy, he was a huge offender of, the war on drugs thing and, all that stuff. But one thing he did do is cut off a lot of the cocaine supply into the country. Back in the 80s, cocaine used to be like heroin is now. Whereas, there was a huge flow of cocaine into the country. And they went in, the way that they solved it was, they went into South America and Central America and all them, and just cut off the whole supply of it by getting rid of the cocoa plants that were used to make it, all this other stuff. And I mean, to get rid of the heroin epidemic, we could do the same by going over to Afghanistan. I mean, Trump's doing it right now. They're bombing the poppy seed or the poppy fields over in Afghanistan. They're getting rid of the supply. And once you dry up the supply, it'll get more and more expensive to the point where people can't afford it anymore, and they're just, they're going to be shit out of luck,
Right.
basically, and not going to be able to buy it anymore. I mean, you're still going to have your user. You're always going to have your users, no matter what
Sure.
policy you implement. You're always going to have people using heroin or crack or
Exactly.
meth or whatever.
Those are some good points. I do want to. We'll stop right there for now because we're about to take another intermission here. This is part 2 of the War on Drugs, the Justice for All podcast with Randall and Gage. We appreciate you guys listening, sticking through. We're gonna do one more part here and then wrap up for the week, and we're gonna come back at you right back with this debate. Stick on through. Thank you.